This is HOA checkmate. She said it never happened, and I had the timestamp. This is your last chance to be reasonable. Julie Reed was standing on my driveway, waving a stack of printed minutes in one hand and her phone on speaker in the other, and she was not asking. A tow warning sticker was stuck to my windshield, bright orange and threatening, even though my car had not moved in 2 days and I was parked in my own driveway. Julie pointed at a missing signature block on one of the pages and yelled that signatures were implied. I held my coffee cup tighter and tried to keep my voice steady. I am a car rental lot manager in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I cannot afford missed shifts. My lease addendum is tied to the Foxglove Falls Reserve Association rules, and Julie just told me she was creating a violation record. She smiled when she said it. I asked her what the violation was. She tapped the phone screen and said the driveway had exceeded the overnight parking threshold. I looked at my car, then at her, then back at the car. It had been there since Sunday night. It was Tuesday evening. Julie said the threshold was 48 hours, and I had crossed it by 6 minutes. I asked where that rule was written. She flipped to a page in the minutes packet and pointed at a paragraph with no signature block. I leaned in. The paragraph said overnight parking was subject to discretion, and discretion was managed by the election committee chair. Julie tapped her chest. That is me, she said. You can be mad, or you can be compliant. I set my coffee cup on the porch railing and asked if she had a time-stamped record of when my car arrived. She said timestamps were not required for visual confirmation. I asked who visually confirmed it. She said she did. I asked when. She said Sunday night at 9:47. I asked if she had a photo. She said photos were not required. I asked if she had a witness. She said witnesses were implied. I stared at her. She stared back. A neighbor watering the lawn 2 houses down paused mid-spray and turned to watch. Julie lifted the phone higher, like the speaker mode gave her legal authority. She said the tow company was on standby, and I had 15 minutes to move the car or pay the compliance fee. I asked how much. She said $200 for the first infraction, plus a $50 administrative processing fee. I asked where that fee schedule was posted. She flipped another page in the minutes packet and pointed at a table with no readable text. I leaned in again. The table had rows and columns, but the text was too small and blurry to read from where I stood. Julie pulled the packet back before I could touch it. She said the fee schedule was approved in the March meeting. I said it was October. She said the approval was retroactive. I felt my chest tighten. I work nights at the rental lot, and my shift starts at 11. If I moved my car now, I would be late. If I did not move it, she would tow it, and I would be even later. If I paid the fee, I would be admitting guilt, and Julie would have a paper trail to justify the next violation. I asked if I could see the full meeting minutes. She said minutes were available by request. I said I was requesting them. She said requests had to be submitted in writing. I said I would email her. She said email was not an accepted submission method. I asked what was. She said certified mail. I asked how long processing took. She said 10 business days. I asked if the tow would wait 10 business days. She smiled again. We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works. The neighbor with the hose turned off the water and walked closer. Julie noticed and raised her voice. She said this was an official compliance action and interference would be documented. The neighbor stopped. I asked Julie if she wanted to document interference, or if she wanted to document the fact that I had been parked in my own driveway for less than 48 hours. She said the threshold was discretionary, and discretion had been exercised. I asked if discretion meant she could change the threshold whenever she wanted. She said discretion meant she could interpret the threshold based on community standards. I asked what community standards were. She said they were defined by the election committee. I asked who was on the election committee. She said she was the chair, and the other members were confidential. I pulled out my phone and opened the HOA portal. Julie watched me. I scrolled to the rules section. The overnight parking rule was not there. I showed her the screen. She said the portal was outdated. I asked when it was last updated. She said updates were pending. I asked who managed updates. She said the management company did. I asked for their contact information. She said it was posted on the website. I said, I was looking at the website. She said, I was looking at the wrong page. I asked which page was correct. She said the contact page. I said the contact page only had a phone number. She said that was correct. I asked if I could call them now. She said office hours were 9 to 5. I checked the time. It was 6:30. Julie tapped her phone screen and said the 15-minute window was closing. I asked if she was serious. She said compliance was always serious. I asked if she had ever towed anyone else in the neighborhood. She said compliance actions were confidential. I asked if the confidentiality rule was in the bylaws. She said it was implied. I asked how many things were implied. She said as many as necessary. I felt my jaw tighten. The neighbor with the hose cleared his throat. Julie turned and told him to move along. He did not move. He said he was Roy, and he used to be a police officer. Julie said that was irrelevant. Roy said it was relevant if she was making threats she could not enforce. Julie turned back to me and said the tow truck was en route. I asked if she had actually called them. She said she had pre-authorized the action. I asked what that meant. She said it meant the tow company had standing permission to remove non-compliant vehicles. I asked if they had my address. She said they had the entire neighborhood. I asked if that was legal. She said it was contractual. I asked if I could see the contract. She said contracts were confidential. Roy stepped closer and said he wanted to hear this. Julie told him to leave. Roy said he was on a public sidewalk. Julie said the sidewalk was HOA property. Roy laughed. Julie did not. She flipped to another page in the minutes packet and pointed at a clause. She said the association had right-of-way over all pedestrian paths, and interference with compliance actions was grounds for fining adjacent property owners. Roy asked if she was threatening to fine him. Julie said she was clarifying the policy. Roy asked if the policy was real. Julie said it was approved. Roy asked when. Julie said March. Roy asked if he could see the meeting recording. Julie said recordings were not required. Roy asked if minutes were required. Julie said minutes were available by request. Roy said he was requesting them. Julie said requests had to be submitted in writing. Roy said he would submit one tomorrow. Julie said processing took 10 business days. Roy looked at me. I looked back. He shook his head. Julie said the window had closed. She tapped her phone screen and said the tow was confirmed. I asked if she was bluffing. She said she never bluffed. I asked if the tow company was really coming. She said they would arrive in 30 minutes. I asked what would happen if I moved the car. She said the tow fee would still apply because the violation had already been recorded. I asked how that made sense. She said it made sense because the violation was the parking duration, not the current location. I asked if she was saying I owed the fee even if I moved the car. She said correct. I asked if that was in the rules. She said it was in the enforcement discretion guidelines. I asked where those were. She said they were internal. I asked if internal meant she made them up. She said internal meant they were committee-level documents. I took a breath. I needed to get to work. I needed this to stop. I asked what she wanted. She said she wanted compliance. I said I would move the car. She said the fee still applied. I said I was not paying a fee for parking in my own driveway. She said then the tow would proceed. I said the tow was illegal. She said it was contractual. I said I did not sign a contract. She said the lease addendum included HOA compliance. I said the HOA compliance clause did not authorize theft. She said it was not theft. I said taking my car without a legal violation was theft. She said the violation was legal because it was documented. Roy asked to see the documentation. Julie ignored him. I asked again. Julie flipped to the back of the minutes packet and pulled out a single sheet. She held it up. The sheet had a table with handwritten entries. One of the entries had my address. The entry said, driveway parking exceeded 48 hours. Visual confirmation. Tow authorized. The entry was dated today. I pointed at the date. I said my car had been there since Sunday night. Julie said the violation was confirmed today. I said the violation could not be confirmed today if the threshold was 48 hours starting Sunday night. Julie said the threshold was 48 hours from the time of visual confirmation. I asked when the visual confirmation happened. She said Sunday night at 9:47. I asked why the entry was dated today. She said the entry was recorded today. I asked why it was not recorded Sunday night. She said recording did not have to happen in real time. I stared at the sheet. Something was wrong. The handwriting looked fresh. The ink was dark and clean, not faded. I asked if I could take a photo. Julie pulled the sheet back. She said documentation was confidential. I said she just showed it to me. She said showing was not the same as distributing. I asked what distributing meant. She said it meant letting me keep a copy. I said I did not want to keep a copy. I just wanted a photo. She said photos were not permitted. I asked why. She said because documentation was confidential. Roy laughed again. Julie turned and told him to leave or she would file a harassment complaint. Roy said she could file whatever she wanted. Julie said she would. Roy said he would look forward to it. I checked the time again. It was 6:45. I had an hour and 15 minutes until my shift started. If the tow truck came in 30 minutes, I would have 45 minutes to deal with it. If I left now, I could get to work on time, but my car would be gone. If I stayed, I would miss my shift, but I could stop the tow. I asked Julie if we could postpone this. She said compliance actions could not be postponed. I asked if she could cancel the tow. She said the tow was already authorized. I asked if authorization meant it was already on the way. She said it meant it was on standby. I asked what standby meant. She said it meant they were ready to dispatch. I asked if they had been dispatched. She said they would be dispatched if I did not comply. I asked what compliance looked like. She said moving the car and paying the fee. I said I would move the car, but I would not pay the fee. She said the fee was non-negotiable. I said the fee was made up. She said the fee was approved. I asked by who. She said by the election committee. I asked when. She said March. I asked if I could see the meeting minutes from March. She said minutes were available by request. I said I was requesting them. She said requests had to be submitted in writing. I said I would submit one right now. She said submission had to be by certified mail. I asked if she was serious. She said compliance was always serious. I said I was asking if she was joking. She said she never joked about compliance. Roy asked if he could request the minutes. Julie said he could. Roy asked if he could submit the request verbally. Julie said no. Roy asked if he could submit it by email. Julie said no. Roy asked if he could hand deliver it. Julie said no. Roy asked what the acceptable method was. Julie said certified mail. Roy asked if she was making this up. Julie said she was enforcing the policy. Roy asked where the policy was written. Julie pointed at the minutes packet. Roy asked if he could see it. Julie said viewing was not the same as access. Roy asked what access meant. Julie said it meant being provided a copy. Roy asked if he could request a copy. Julie said he could. Roy asked how. Julie said certified mail. Roy laughed. I did not. I made a decision. I said I would move the car, and I would submit a formal records request tomorrow. Julie said the tow fee still applied. I said I was not paying it. She said the fee would be added to my account. I asked what account. She said my HOA account. I asked if I had an HOA account. She said every homeowner had one. I said I was not a homeowner. I was a tenant. She said tenants were subject to the same compliance rules. I asked if that was in the lease. She said it was in the addendum. I said I read the addendum. She said I clearly did not read it carefully. I said I read it 3 times. She said then I should have seen the compliance clause. I said the compliance clause did not mention tow fees. She said the compliance clause authorized enforcement actions. I asked if enforcement actions included fees. She said they included anything necessary for compliance. I felt my phone buzz. It was my manager. I ignored it. Julie noticed and smiled. She said I looked busy. I said I was. She said compliance was time sensitive. I said I understood. She said then I should move the car. I said I would. She said and pay the fee. I said I would not. She said then the fee would be added to my account, and a lien would be filed if it remained unpaid for 30 days. I asked if she was threatening a lien. She said she was explaining the process. I asked if the process was legal. She said it was contractual. I said contracts had to be enforceable. She said the contract was enforceable. I asked if she had a copy. She said copies were confidential. I asked why everything was confidential. She said because confidentiality protected the association. Roy cleared his throat. He said he wanted to help. I asked how. He said he had some experience with HOA disputes, and he knew what mattered legally. Julie said his experience was irrelevant. Roy said it was relevant if she was bluffing. Julie said she was not bluffing. Roy said then she would not mind if he stuck around. Julie said she would mind. Roy said he was staying anyway. Julie said she would file a complaint. Roy said he would look forward to reading it. Julie turned back to me. She said the 30-minute window was closing. I checked the time. It was 6:55. If the tow truck came at 7, I had 5 minutes. If it did not come, she was bluffing. If it did come, I was in trouble. I asked Julie if she had ever towed anyone else. She said compliance actions were confidential. I asked if confidentiality meant she had not towed anyone else. She said it meant compliance actions were not disclosed. I asked if non-disclosure meant no one else had been towed. She said it meant I was not entitled to know. I asked why I was not entitled to know. She said because disclosure would violate privacy. I asked whose privacy. She said other residents. I asked if other residents had been towed. She said that was confidential. I asked if confidentiality meant yes. She said it meant I was not entitled to know. Roy laughed. Julie glared at him. He stopped laughing but kept smiling. I asked Julie if the tow company was local. She said they were contracted. I asked for the company name. She said it was confidential. I asked why a tow company name would be confidential. She said because the contract was confidential. I asked if the contract terms were confidential. She said yes. I asked if the fee structure was confidential. She said yes. I asked if everything was confidential. She said everything that needed to be. I asked who decided what needed to be. She said the election committee did. I asked if the election committee had any oversight. She said oversight was internal. I asked what internal meant. She said it meant the committee oversaw itself. Roy whistled. Julie told him to leave. Roy stayed. My phone buzzed again. I checked it. My manager was asking if I was on the way. I texted back that I had an emergency. He asked if I would be late. I said maybe. He said maybe was not an answer. I said I would update him in 15 minutes. He said 15 minutes was cutting it close. I said I knew. Julie watched me text. She said I looked stressed. I said I was fine. She said compliance would be easier if I just paid the fee. I said I was not paying a made-up fee. She said the fee was approved. I said approved by who? She said the election committee. I said the election committee was just her. She said it was not just her. I asked who else was on it. She said that was confidential. I said everything was confidential. She said yes. I heard an engine. I turned. A tow truck was turning onto the street. Julie smiled. I felt my chest tighten. The truck slowed as it approached. The driver leaned out the window and asked if this was the address. Julie said yes. The driver asked if the vehicle was clear to tow. Julie said yes. I stepped between the truck and my car. I said it was not clear to tow. The driver looked confused. Julie said the owner was non-compliant. I said I was the owner and I was parked in my own driveway. The driver looked at Julie. Julie held up the minutes packet. She said the vehicle was in violation of the overnight parking policy. The driver asked if I had been notified. I said I had been notified 6 minutes ago. The driver looked at Julie. Julie said notification was not required for visual confirmation violations. The driver turned off the truck. He stepped out. He was tall, older, wearing a company shirt with a logo I did not recognize. He walked over and asked to see the authorization. Julie handed him the single handwritten sheet. He looked at it. He asked if this was official. Julie said yes. He asked if it was signed. Julie said signatures were implied. The driver looked at me. I shook my head. He looked at Roy. Roy shook his head. The driver handed the sheet back to Julie. He said he could not tow without proper authorization. Julie said the authorization was proper. The driver said it was not signed. Julie said signatures were not required. The driver said his company required them. Julie said his company was contracted by the HOA. The driver said the contract required signed authorization. Julie said the contract did not specify signature requirements. The driver said it did. Julie said he was wrong. The driver said he was not. Roy stepped closer. He asked the driver if he had a copy of the contract. The driver said he did not carry it. Roy asked if he could call his dispatcher. The driver said he could. Roy asked him to do it. The driver pulled out his phone. Julie told him not to. The driver ignored her. He called. The dispatcher answered. The driver explained the situation. The dispatcher asked if the authorization was signed. The driver said no. The dispatcher asked if the HOA representative was on site. The driver said yes. The dispatcher asked to speak to her. The driver handed the phone to Julie. Julie took it. She said this was Julie Reed, election committee chair. The dispatcher asked if she had proper authorization to request a tow. Julie said yes. The dispatcher asked if the authorization was signed. Julie said signatures were implied. The dispatcher said implied authorization was not valid. Julie said it was valid under HOA policy. The dispatcher said it was not valid under their contract. Julie said the contract was confidential. The dispatcher said the contract was not confidential to them. Julie hung up. The driver stared at her. He took his phone back. He said he was not towing the vehicle. Julie said he was contractually obligated. The driver said he was not obligated to tow without proper authorization. Julie said she was providing proper authorization. The driver said she was not. Julie raised her voice. She said she would file a complaint. The driver said she could file whatever she wanted. Julie said she would terminate the contract. The driver said she did not have the authority to terminate the contract. Julie said she was the election committee chair. The driver said he did not care. He got back in the truck and drove away. Julie turned back to me. She said the tow would be rescheduled. I said I did not think it would. She said I was wrong. I said the driver just refused. She said she would find another company. I said good luck. She said luck was not required. I said then authority was. She said she had authority. I said the driver did not think so. She said the driver was wrong. I said the driver knew his contract. She said the contract was negotiable. I said negotiable meant she did not have the authority she claimed. She said I was twisting her words. I said I was repeating them. Roy laughed. Julie told him to shut up. Roy stopped laughing, but kept smiling. Julie said this was not over. I said it looked over. She said I still owed the fee. I said I did not. She said the fee was approved. I said the fee was made up. She said it was documented. I pointed at the handwritten sheet. I said that was not documentation. She said it was official. I said it was fresh ink on a blank sheet. She said the ink was irrelevant. I said the ink was evidence. She asked evidence of what? I said evidence that she wrote it today. She said she recorded it today. I said she claimed the violation happened Sunday. She said it did. I said, then, why did she wait until today to record it? She said recording did not have to happen in real time. I said real-time recording was the only way to prove it happened. She said proof was not required. I said proof was always required. She said not for visual confirmation violations. I asked Roy if that sounded right. Roy said it did not. I asked Julie if she had any other proof. She said she did not need other proof. I said then I did not believe her. She said belief was irrelevant. I said belief was the only thing that mattered. She said compliance mattered. I said compliance required a real violation. She said the violation was real. I said it was not. She said it was documented. I pointed at the sheet again. I said documentation required more than fresh ink. She said the ink was irrelevant. I said then the documentation was irrelevant. She said the documentation was official. I said official required a process. She said the process was internal. I said internal was another word for made up. She said I was being unreasonable. I said I was being rational. Roy asked Julie if she had a copy of the rules. Julie said rules were available by request. Roy said he was requesting them. Julie said requests had to be submitted in writing. Roy said he would submit one tomorrow. Julie said processing took 10 business days. Roy said he would wait. Julie said waiting would not change anything. Roy said it would give him time to read. Julie said reading would not help. Roy asked why. Julie said because the rules were subject to interpretation. Roy asked who interpreted them. Julie said the election committee did. Roy asked if interpretation meant making them up. Julie said interpretation meant applying them appropriately. Roy asked what appropriately meant. Julie said it meant in accordance with community standards. Roy asked what community standards were. Julie said they were determined by the committee. Roy asked if the committee was just her. Julie said it was not just her. Roy asked who else. Julie said that was confidential. Roy laughed. Julie did not. I checked the time. It was 7:15. I was going to be late. I texted my manager that I would be there by 7:45. He said I was already late. I said I knew. He asked what the emergency was. I said it was an HOA thing. He said HOA things were not emergencies. I said this one was. He said I needed to be there by 8 or I would miss the shift handoff. I said I would be there. He said I better be. I put my phone away. Julie was watching me. She said I looked like I needed to leave. I said I did. She said then I should pay the fee and go. I said I was not paying the fee. She said then I would be added to the non-compliance list. I asked what that was. She said it was a list of residents who refused to comply. I asked what happened to people on the list. She said they faced escalating enforcement actions. I asked what that meant. She said it meant fines, liens, and legal action. I asked if she was threatening me. She said she was explaining the process. I asked if the process included harassment. She said it did not. I asked what this was. She said it was compliance. I said it felt like harassment. She said feelings were irrelevant. I said feelings were evidence of intent. She said intent was not required for compliance. I said intent was required for harassment. She said she was not harassing me. I said she was standing on my driveway threatening to tow my car for parking in my own space. She said I was in violation. I said I was not. She said the documentation said I was. I said the documentation was fake. She said it was official. I said official did not mean real. She said it did. I said it did not. Roy asked if we were going to do this all night. I said probably. Julie folded the handwritten sheet and put it back in the minutes packet. She said I would hear from the HOA attorney. I asked if the HOA had an attorney. She said yes. I asked for the name. She said it was confidential. I said attorney names were public. She said not when the attorney was retained by the HOA. I said retained meant hired. She said correct. I asked when the attorney was hired. She said that was confidential. I asked what the attorney would do. She said the attorney would send a demand letter. I asked, demanding what? She said payment of the fee in compliance with the rules. I asked what would happen if I did not comply. She said the attorney would escalate. I asked what escalate meant. She said it meant legal action. I asked what kind. She said that depended on my response. I asked what response she wanted. She said payment and compliance. I said I was not paying. She said then I would be escalated. Roy asked how much the attorney cost. Julie said that was confidential. Roy asked if the HOA was paying for it. Julie said yes. Roy asked if the HOA had a budget. Julie said yes. Roy asked if the budget was public. Julie said no. Roy asked why not. Julie said because it was confidential. Roy asked if everything was confidential. Julie said everything that needed to be. Roy asked who decided what needed to be. Julie said the election committee did. Roy asked if the election committee had any accountability. Julie said accountability was internal. Roy asked what internal meant. Julie said it meant the committee was accountable to itself. Roy asked if that was legal. Julie said it was. Roy asked how. Julie said because it was in the bylaws. Roy asked if he could see the bylaws. Julie said bylaws were available by request. Roy said he was requesting them. Julie said requests had to be submitted in writing. Roy said he would. Julie said processing took 10 business days. Roy said he would wait. Julie said waiting would not change anything. I asked Julie why she was doing this. She said she was doing her job. I asked if her job was harassing tenants. She said her job was enforcing compliance. I asked why I was the only one being enforced. She said I was not the only one. I asked who else. She said that was confidential. I said confidentiality was convenient. She said confidentiality was required. I asked why. She said to protect privacy. I asked whose privacy. She said other residents. I asked if other residents were being towed. She said that was confidential. I said then I did not believe her. She said belief was irrelevant. I said it was the only thing that mattered. She said compliance mattered. I said compliance required fairness. She said fairness was subjective. I said selective enforcement was illegal. She said it was not selective. I said it looked selective. She said appearances were irrelevant. Roy asked if he could take a photo of the tow warning sticker. Julie said no. Roy asked why not. Julie said because it was HOA property. Roy said it was on my car. Julie said my car was on HOA property. Roy said the driveway was my property. Julie said the driveway was subject to HOA rules. Roy said that did not make it HOA property. Julie said it did. Roy asked where that was written. Julie pointed at the minutes packet. Roy asked if he could see it. Julie said no. Roy asked why not. Julie said because it was confidential. Roy asked if she understood how absurd that sounded. Julie said absurdity was subjective. Roy said legality was not. Julie said legality was interpretive. Roy said interpretation required a basis. Julie said the basis was the bylaws. Roy asked if he could see the bylaws. Julie said requests had to be submitted in writing. Roy said he knew. Julie smiled. I told Roy I needed to go. He said he understood. I asked if he would stay and take photos. He said he would. I asked if Julie would try to stop him. He said probably. I asked if that mattered. He said no. Julie asked what we were talking about. I said nothing. She said it sounded like conspiracy. I said it sounded like a conversation. She said conversations about compliance actions were subject to review. I asked by who. She said the election committee. I asked if review meant punishment. She said review meant documentation. I asked what documentation meant. She said it meant recording the conversation. I asked if she was recording now. She said she did not need to. I asked why. She said because she remembered everything. Roy laughed. Julie did not. I walked to my car. Julie followed. I unlocked the door. She stood behind me. I asked her to move. She said she was observing. I said she was blocking. She said observation required proximity. I said proximity required consent. She said consent was implied. I asked how. She said by my presence on HOA property. I said I was on my property. She said my property was subject to HOA oversight. I said oversight did not mean standing behind me. She said it did. I asked if she planned to follow me everywhere. She said she planned to ensure compliance. I asked what that meant. She said it meant monitoring my behavior. I asked if monitoring was legal. She said it was. I asked how. She said because it was in the rules. I asked what rule. She said the compliance monitoring rule. I asked where that was. She pointed at the minutes packet. I asked if I could see it. She said no. I got in the car and closed the door. Julie knocked on the window. I ignored her. She knocked again. I started the engine. She knocked harder. I backed out of the driveway. She stepped aside. I drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw her on her phone. Roy was still on the sidewalk, watching. I called him from the car. He answered. I asked what she was doing. He said she was taking photos of my car. I asked why. He said probably to document the violation. I said the violation was fake. He said he knew. I asked if he got photos of her. He said he did. I asked if she tried to stop him. He said she threatened to file a complaint. I asked if he cared. He said no. I thanked him. He said I was welcome. I asked if he had dealt with this before. He said he had. I asked how it ended. He said it depended. I asked on what. He said on how much proof I could gather. I arrived at work at 7:50. My manager was annoyed but said nothing. I started the shift. My mind was not on the cars. I kept thinking about Julie and the handwritten sheet and the tow truck driver and the way everything she said was confidential. I kept thinking about the minutes packet and the missing signature block and the fresh ink. I kept thinking about Roy and the way he laughed and the way he said proof mattered. I kept thinking about the lease addendum and the compliance clause and the way Julie said liens were coming. I kept thinking about the word implied. Signatures were implied. Witnesses were implied. Consent was implied. Authority was implied. Everything was implied except the threat. During my break, I called the management company. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a message asking for a copy of the meeting minutes from March and a copy of the current rules. I said I was a tenant at Foxglove Falls Reserve Association and I was facing a compliance action I believed was unlawful. I gave my address and phone number. I hung up. I checked the HOA portal again. The rules section was still empty. I checked the contact page. The phone number was the same one I just called. I checked the board member list. There were 3 names. One was Julie Reed, election committee chair. The other 2 had no contact information. I screenshot the page. I texted Roy and asked if he knew the other board members. He said he did not. I asked if he knew anyone who did. He said maybe. I asked who. He said there was a guy named Mark who used to be on the board. I asked if Mark would talk to me. Roy said he would ask. I thanked him. He texted back 10 minutes later and said Mark would meet me tomorrow at 10. I said I worked nights and I slept during the day. Roy said Mark only had mornings free. I said I would make it work. Roy sent me Mark's address. I saved it. The rest of the shift was slow. I processed returns, checked inventory, updated the system. My manager asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. He said I looked distracted. I said I had an HOA issue. He said everyone had HOA issues. I said mine was escalating. He said escalating how? I said threats, fake documentation, harassment. He said that sounded illegal. I said it probably was. He asked if I had a lawyer. I said I did not. He said I should get one. I said I could not afford one. He said then I should document everything. I said I was trying. He said good. I said thanks. I got home at 7 in the morning. The tow warning sticker was gone from my windshield. I checked the driveway. There was a new sticker. This one was red instead of orange. It said, "Final notice, compliance required, tow authorized." I pulled out my phone and took photos. I texted them to Roy. He texted back immediately. He said that was not legal. I said I knew. He said I needed to move fast. I asked what he meant. He said Julie was escalating faster than normal. I asked what normal was. He said usually there were warnings spread over weeks. I said this was the second sticker in 12 hours. He said exactly. I asked what that meant. He said it meant she was targeting me. I did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. I wrote down every conversation with Julie. I wrote down the timeline. I wrote down the tow truck driver's refusal. I wrote down the handwritten sheet in the fresh ink. I wrote down the missing signature block. I wrote down the word implied. I wrote down the confidentiality responses. I wrote down the selective enforcement claim. I wrote down the threats. I wrote down the second sticker. I wrote down the fact that 12 hours was not enough time for a final notice. I wrote down the fact that the first sticker was still within the claim compliance window when I moved the car. I wrote down the fact that moving the car did not stop the threat. I stared at the list. Something was missing. I opened my laptop and searched for Foxglove Falls Reserve Association meeting minutes. Nothing came up. I searched for Foxglove Falls Reserve Association bylaws. Nothing came up. I searched for Foxglove Falls Reserve Association board members. Nothing came up. I searched for Julie Reed Election Committee. Nothing came up. I searched for Julie Reed Coeur d'Alene. I found a LinkedIn profile. It said she was a compliance consultant. I clicked on her work history. She had worked for 3 different HOAs in the last 5 years. I screenshot the profile. I searched for reviews of those HOAs. 2 of them had complaints about selective enforcement and harassment. 1 had a lawsuit. I screenshot the complaints. I texted Roy and asked if he knew about Julie's work history. He said he did not. I sent him the screenshots. He called me. He said this was bigger than I thought. I asked what he meant. He said Julie was a professional. I said a professional what? He said a professional enforcer. I asked what that meant. He said it meant she got hired to clean up HOAs that were losing money. I asked how cleaning up involved harassment. He said it involved finding violations and collecting fees. I said that sounded like extortion. He said it was close. I asked if it was legal. He said it depended on how it was done. I asked how Julie was doing it. He said selectively and aggressively. I asked if that was legal. He said probably not. Roy said I needed to talk to Mark today. I said I would. He said I also needed to file a police report. I asked for what? He said harassment and potentially fraud. I asked if the police would care. He said they might if I had proof. I asked what proof. He said the stickers, the timeline, the screenshots, the tow truck driver's refusal. I said that was not much. He said it was more than most people had. I asked what most people did. He said most people paid and moved on. I asked why. He said because fighting was expensive and time-consuming. I asked if he thought I should fight. He said he thought I should document everything and then decide. I said I already decided. He asked what I decided. I said I was fighting. He said good. I met Mark at 10. He lived 3 streets over. His house was similar to mine, small and plain, with a narrow driveway and a wooden fence. He answered the door before I knocked. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and a cautious expression. He invited me in. I followed him to the kitchen. He offered coffee. I accepted. He poured 2 cups and sat down. He asked what I wanted to know. I said everything. He laughed. He said that would take a while. I said I had time. He said okay. Mark said he was on the board 2 years ago. He said Julie was hired as a consultant to help with compliance. He said the HOA was losing money because people were not paying dues. He said the board thought enforcement would help. He said Julie promised results. He said she delivered. I asked how. He said she found violations everywhere. I asked if the violations were real. He said some were. I asked about the others. He said the others were interpretation. I asked what that meant. He said it meant she read the rules in ways that created violations. I asked if the board objected. He said some did. I asked what happened. He said Julie threatened to quit. I asked why that mattered. He said because the HOA was already paying her a retainer. I asked how much. He said $20,000 for 6 months. I stared at him. I asked if the HOA had that kind of money. He said no. I asked where the money came from. He said it came from a loan. I asked who approved the loan. He said the board did. I asked if the members knew. He said no. I asked why not. He said because the loan was classified as an operating expense. I asked if that was legal. He said probably not. I asked if anyone complained. He said one person did. I asked what happened. He said Julie targeted them. I asked how. He said selective enforcement, escalating fines, harassment. I asked if the person fought back. He said they tried. I asked what happened. He said they sold their house and moved. I asked when. He said 18 months ago. I asked if anyone else complained. He said no. I asked why not. He said because everyone saw what happened to the first person. Mark said he resigned from the board 6 months after Julie was hired. I asked why. He said because he could not watch it anymore. I asked what it was. He said the targeting, the lies, the way Julie twisted every rule to justify a fine. I asked if he reported it. He said he did. I asked to who. He said the state HOA regulatory board. I asked what they did. He said they opened an investigation. I asked what happened. He said the investigation was closed. I asked why. He said insufficient evidence. I asked what that meant. He said it meant the board did not cooperate and Julie destroyed the records. I asked if that was legal. He said no. I asked if anyone was punished. He said no. I asked Mark if he had any proof. He said he had some. I asked what. He said he had emails, meeting notes, and a copy of the original complaint. I asked if I could see them. He said yes. He stood and walked to a closet. He pulled out a cardboard box. He set it on the table. He said this was everything he kept. I opened the box. Inside were folders, printouts, and a spiral notebook. I pulled out the notebook. Mark said that was his meeting notes. I flipped through it. The notes were detailed, dated, and organized. I saw Julie's name on almost every page. I saw phrases like selective enforcement, retaliation, and procedural violations. I saw a note that said, Julie threatened to sue board member who questioned fee structure. I looked at Mark. I asked if that was real. He said yes. I asked if the board member sued back. He said no. I asked why. He said because they were scared. I asked Mark if he knew about the tow warnings. He said he did not. I showed him the photos. He stared at them. He said this was new. I asked what he meant. He said Julie used to wait longer between escalations. I asked why she was moving faster now. He said he did not know. I said I thought she was targeting me. He said probably. I asked why. He said because I was new, because I was a tenant, because I did not have deep roots in the neighborhood. I asked if that made me easier to push around. He said it made me harder to defend. I asked why. He said because tenants had fewer rights in HOA disputes, and because other owners would not care. I asked if he cared. He said yes. I asked why. He said because what happened to me would eventually happen to someone else. Mark said I needed to reopen the old case. I asked what old case. He said the case that got closed 18 months ago. I asked what case that was. He said the missing money case. I asked what missing money. He said the HOA collected $50,000 in special assessments 2 years ago for roof repairs. I asked what happened to the money. He said it disappeared. I asked how. He said the invoices were fake. I asked how he knew. He said because he called the contractor and the contractor said they never worked for the HOA. I asked if he reported it. He said yes. I asked what happened. He said the board said the contractor was confused and the work was done by a subcontractor. I asked if he believed that. He said no. I asked why not. He said because there were no subcontractor invoices. I asked where the money went. He said he did not know. I asked Mark if he thought Julie took the money. He said he thought someone did. I asked if he had proof. He said no. I asked if he had suspects. He said yes. I asked who. He said Julie and the board president at the time. I asked who that was. He said a man named Rick. I asked where Rick was now. He said he moved away right after the investigation closed. I asked if that was suspicious. He said very. I asked if anyone followed up. He said no. I asked why not. He said because the new board president was Julie's friend. I asked who the new board president was. He said a woman named Sandra. I asked if Sandra was still on the board. He said yes. I asked if Sandra knew about the missing money. He said probably. I asked if Sandra was complicit. He said possibly. I stared at the box. I asked Mark if I could take it. He said yes. I asked if he wanted it back. He said no. I asked why not. He said because he was done fighting. I asked if he thought I should fight. He said yes. I asked why. He said because someone had to. I asked if he thought I could win. He said he thought I had a chance. I asked what kind of chance. He said better than most. I asked why. He said because I was asking questions and I was documenting everything. I asked if that was enough. He said it was a start. I thanked him. He said I was welcome. He said if I needed anything else, I should call. I said I would. I carried the box to my car. I checked the time. It was 11:30. I had slept 0 hours in the last 30. I needed to sleep. I needed to go through the box. I needed to call the police. I needed to submit a records request. I needed to figure out how to stop Julie. I drove home. The red sticker was still on my windshield. I parked and carried the box inside. I set it on the kitchen table. I made more coffee. I sat down. I opened the first folder. The folder was labeled Special Assessment 2023. Inside were printouts of emails, invoices, and meeting minutes. I read the emails first. They were between Mark and the board president, Rick. Mark was asking for proof of the roof repairs. Rick was saying the invoices were confidential. Mark was asking why. Rick was saying because the contractor requested confidentiality. Mark was asking for the contractor's name. Rick was saying that was also confidential. Mark was saying confidentiality did not apply to HOA expenses. Rick was saying it did. Mark was asking for a legal basis. Rick was saying the basis was in the bylaws. Mark was asking for the bylaw citation. Rick stopped responding. I read the invoices. They were formatted identically. Each invoice had the same header, the same font, the same layout. The contractor name was listed as Mountain Ridge Construction. The invoices totaled $50,000. I searched for Mountain Ridge Construction in Coeur d'Alene. Nothing came up. I searched for Mountain Ridge Construction in Idaho. I found one result, but it was in Boise, and it specialized in commercial projects. I called the number. A man answered. I asked if they had ever worked in Coeur d'Alene. He said no. I asked if they had ever worked for an HOA. He said no. I asked if they knew anyone named Rick or Julie. He said no. I thanked him and hung up. I read the meeting minutes. They were dated March 2 years ago. The minutes said the board approved the special assessment for roof repairs. The minutes said the contractor was selected by the board president. The minutes said the work would begin in April. I flipped to the next set of minutes, dated May. The minutes said the work was completed. The minutes said the invoices were paid. The minutes said the contractor requested confidentiality. I flipped to the next set, dated June. There was no mention of the roof repairs. I flipped to the next set, dated July. There was no mention. I flipped through the rest of the year. No mention. I looked at the invoices again. They were all dated April. They were all paid in May. They were all fake. I pulled out my phone and called Roy. He answered. I told him about the missing money. He was quiet. I asked if he knew. He said he suspected. I asked why he did not tell me. He said because he had no proof. I said I had proof now. He asked what kind. I said fake invoices. He asked how I knew they were fake. I said because I called the contractor and they said they never worked for the HOA. He whistled. He said this was bigger than selective enforcement. I said I knew. He asked what I was going to do. I said I was going to file a police report and reopen the case. He asked if I thought the police would care. I said I thought they might if I handed them evidence of fraud. He said maybe. I said maybe was better than nothing. I asked Roy if he knew Sandra. He said he did. I asked if she was involved. He said he did not know. I asked if she was Julie's friend. He said they were close. I asked how close. He said they had lunch together every week. I asked if that meant Sandra knew about the missing money. He said probably. I asked if Sandra was on the board when the money disappeared. He said no. I asked when Sandra joined. He said 6 months after Rick left. I asked if that was suspicious. He said very. I asked if anyone questioned it. He said no. I asked why not. He said because most people did not know there was anything to question. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA drama. Roy said I needed to connect the dots. I asked what dots. He said the missing money, the fake invoices, Rick leaving, Sandra joining, and Julie escalating. I asked how they connected. He said he did not know yet. I said I would figure it out. He said to be careful. I asked why. He said because Julie was dangerous. I asked how. He said because she knew how to use the system and she was not afraid to lie. I said I was not afraid either. He said good. I said I needed to go. He said okay. I hung up. I went through the rest of the box. There were more emails, more meeting notes, and a printed timeline Mark had made. The timeline started with Julie being hired. It showed the special assessment. It showed the complaint. It showed Rick leaving. It showed Sandra joining. It showed the investigation being closed. It showed Mark resigning. It showed 3 other owners selling their houses and moving. I stared at the timeline. The pattern was clear. Julie came in, money disappeared, people who asked questions left. Julie stayed. I took a photo of the timeline. I checked the HOA portal again. Still nothing. I called the management company again. Voicemail. I left another message. I said I was following up on my records request, and I was also requesting all financial records related to the 2023 special assessment. I gave my name and address. I hung up. I checked my email. Nothing from the management company. Nothing from the HOA. Nothing from Julie. I opened a new email and wrote to the State HOA Regulatory Board. I said I was a tenant at Foxglove Falls Reserve Association, and I was reporting suspected fraud, harassment, and selective enforcement. I attached the photos of the fake invoices, the timeline, and the stickers. I hit send. I finally went to bed at 2 in the afternoon. I set my alarm for 9. I did not sleep well. I kept waking up thinking about Julie and the missing money, and the way Mark said people who asked questions left. I kept thinking about the timeline and the invoices, and the way Rick disappeared right after the investigation closed. I kept thinking about Sandra, and the way Roy said she was close to Julie. I kept thinking about the fact that I was now asking questions, and I was now being targeted. I kept thinking about the fact that if I did not stop this, I would be the next person to leave. I woke up at 9. My alarm was blaring. I turned it off and checked my phone. I had 3 texts from Roy. The first said Julie was at the community mailbox this morning talking to neighbors. The second said she was showing people a photo of my car. The third said she was saying I was non-compliant, and other residents should report any violations they saw. I texted back and asked if anyone believed her. Roy said some did. I asked who. He said the newer owners. I asked why. He said because they did not know better. I asked if anyone defended me. He said he did. I asked what happened. Roy said Julie told him to stay out of it. I asked what he said. Roy said he told her no. I asked what she said. Roy said she walked away. I got ready for work. I checked my windshield. The red sticker was still there. I peeled it off and put it in a plastic bag. I took photos of the adhesive residue. I got in the car and drove to work. My manager was already there. He asked how the HOA thing was going. I said it was escalating. He asked if I needed time off. I said no. He asked if I was sure. I said yes. He said to let him know if that changed. I said I would. I started my shift. My mind was still on Julie and the missing money and the way she was turning neighbors against me. During my break, I checked my email. There was a response from the state regulatory board. It said they received my complaint and they would review it. It said review could take up to 60 days. It said if they needed more information, they would contact me. It said I should continue documenting any violations. I replied and thanked them. I attached the photos of the second sticker and Roy's texts about Julie talking to neighbors. I hit send. I checked the HOA portal again. Still nothing. I called the management company again. This time, someone answered. The woman who answered said her name was Linda, and she was the property manager. I said I had been leaving messages. She said she got them. I asked why she had not responded. She said she had been dealing with other issues. I asked if my records request was being processed. She said it was. I asked when I would get the records. She said 10 business days. I said that was what Julie told me. Linda said that was the policy. I asked if the policy was in the bylaws. Linda said it was. I asked if I could get a copy of the bylaws. Linda said bylaws were available by request. I said I was requesting them. Linda said she would add that to my request. I asked if I could get everything sooner. Linda said no. I asked why not. Linda said because processing took time. I asked how much time. Linda said 10 business days. I said I understood that, but I was facing escalating harassment, and I needed the records to defend myself. Linda was quiet. I asked if she was still there. She said yes. I asked if she could help. She said she would see what she could do. I thanked her. She hung up. I finished my shift and drove home. It was 3 a.m. The street was dark. I parked in my driveway. I checked the windshield. No sticker. I checked the door. No notice. I went inside. I checked my email. Nothing new. I checked my phone. One text from Roy. It said Julie filed a formal complaint against him for interfering with compliance actions. I called him. He answered. I asked what the complaint said. He said it said he was harassing her and creating a hostile environment. I asked if that was true. He said no. I asked what he actually did. He said he took photos and asked questions. I said that was not harassment. He said he knew. I asked what would happen. He said probably nothing. I asked why. He said because he had proof of what actually happened, and Julie had lies. I asked if he was worried. He said no. I asked why not. He said because he had dealt with worse. I asked what worse meant. He said people who actually broke the law. I laughed. He laughed. I said I was sorry he was getting dragged into this. He said he was not dragged. He chose to help. I thanked him. He said I was welcome. Roy said I needed to set a trap. I asked what kind. He said the kind where Julie incriminated herself. I asked how. He said by getting her to admit something on record. I asked what she would admit. He said probably nothing directly, but if I pushed the right way, she might slip. I asked what the right way was. He said asking her about the missing money. I said she would just say it was confidential. He said maybe, but maybe she would say something else. I asked what else. He said something that connected her to the fake invoices or to Rick or to Sandra. I said that was a long shot. He said long shots were better than no shots. I said okay. He said to record everything. I said I would. He said to stay safe. I said I would try. The next morning, I got a call from Linda. She said she had my records. I asked if it had been 10 business days. She said no. I asked why she was calling early. She said because she reviewed my complaint to the state and she thought I should see the records sooner. I asked what changed her mind. She said she found some irregularities. I asked what kind. She said invoice irregularities. I asked if she meant the fake invoices. She said she did not know if they were fake, but they looked suspicious. I asked if I could come pick up the records. She said yes. I asked when. She said any time. I said I would be there in an hour. She said okay. I drove to the management company office. It was in a small building near downtown. Linda met me at the front desk. She was older, professional, and looked tired. She handed me a thick folder. She said this was everything I requested plus the financial records from 2023. I asked if she looked at them. She said she did. I asked what she thought. She said she thought someone should have caught this 2 years ago. I asked if she was on the job 2 years ago. She said no. I asked when she started. She said 6 months ago. I asked who was here before her. She said a man named Greg. I asked where Greg was now. She said he quit. I asked why. She said she did not know. I asked if it was sudden. She said very. I asked if it was around the time the investigation closed. She said yes. I stared at her. She stared back. I asked if she thought Greg was involved. She said she did not know, but she thought I should ask. I asked Linda if she had contact information for Greg. She said she did not. I asked if she had his last name. She said Greg Turner. I thanked her. She said to be careful. I asked why everyone kept saying that. She said because Julie was connected, and she did not like being questioned. I asked what connected meant. She said it meant Julie knew people. I asked what people. Linda said she did not know, but she knew Julie had worked for other HOAs and she had a reputation. I asked what kind of reputation. Linda said the kind where problems disappeared. I asked what that meant. Linda said it meant people who complained either stopped complaining or left. I said that sounded like threats. Linda said it probably was. I asked if she had reported it. Linda said she just started looking into it. I asked if she would report it. Linda said she would if I did. I said I already did. Linda said good. I took the folder and left. I sat in my car and opened it. Inside were meeting minutes, financial reports, and invoices. I flipped to the 2023 financial report. The special assessment was listed as $50,000 collected. The expenses were listed as $50,000 paid to Mountain Ridge Construction. I flipped to the invoices. They were the same ones I saw in Mark's box. I flipped to the meeting minutes from March 2023. The minutes said the board approved the special assessment. The minutes said the contractor was selected by Rick. The minutes said the work would begin in April. I flipped to the minutes from May. The minutes said the work was completed. The minutes said the invoices were paid. The minutes said the contractor requested confidentiality. I flipped to the minutes from June. There was a note at the bottom. The note said, Board member Mark requested contractor contact information. Request denied due to confidentiality agreement. I flipped to July. Another note. It said, Board member Mark submitted formal complaint regarding special assessment. Complaint under review. I flipped to August. Another note. It said complaint closed due to insufficient evidence. Board member Mark resigned. I stared at the page. The timeline was exactly what Mark said. I took photos of every page. I searched for Greg Turner on LinkedIn. I found 3 results. One was in Coeur d'Alene. I clicked on the profile. It said he was a former property manager. It said he left his last position in August 2 years ago. It said he was currently unemployed. I sent him a message. I said I was investigating irregularities at Foxglove Falls Reserve Association, and I wanted to ask him some questions. I gave my phone number. I hit send. I did not expect a response. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Greg. Greg said he got my message. I asked if he was willing to talk. He said yes. I asked why. He said because he had been waiting for someone to ask. I asked what he meant. He said he knew something was wrong, but he could not prove it, and when he tried to ask questions, he got fired. I asked who fired him. He said the board did. I asked which board members. He said Rick and Julie. I asked if Sandra was involved. He said Sandra was not on the board yet. I asked when Sandra joined. He said right after he was fired. I asked if he thought that was connected. He said absolutely. I asked how. He said because Sandra was Julie's sister. I stopped breathing. I asked Greg to repeat that. He said Sandra was Julie's sister. I asked how he knew. He said because Julie told him. I asked why Julie would tell him that. He said because Julie was bragging. I asked what she was bragging about. He said she was bragging about how easy it was to control the board when you had family on it. I asked if Rick knew. Greg said Rick definitely knew. I asked if Rick and Julie were working together. Greg said yes. I asked if Greg had proof. He said no. I asked why not. He said because Julie deleted everything. I asked what everything meant. Greg said emails, files, meeting recordings. I asked if that was legal. Greg said no. I asked if he reported it. Greg said he tried. I asked what happened. Greg said the board fired him before he could finish the report. I asked Greg if he would be willing to give a statement. He said yes. I asked if he would be willing to testify. He said yes. I asked if he was scared. He said he was terrified. I asked why he was helping. He said because what Julie did to him, she would do to someone else, and he did not want that to happen. I said it was already happening to me. Greg said he figured. I asked if he knew anything else. He said he knew Rick and Julie split the money. I asked how he knew. Greg said because he saw a text message on Rick's phone. I asked what the text said. Greg said it said, "Your half is in the account." I asked whose account. Greg said he did not know. I asked if he screenshot the text. Greg said no. I asked why not. Greg said because Rick caught him looking and deleted the text immediately. I asked Greg if he would meet me. He said yes. I asked when. He said today if possible. I said I worked tonight, but I was free until 6. He said he could meet at 4. I asked where. He said a coffee shop near the lake. I said I would be there. He said okay. I hung up. I stared at the folder. Julie and Sandra were sisters. Rick and Julie split $50,000. Greg was fired for asking questions. Mark resigned for asking questions. The investigation was closed because Julie deleted the evidence. The pattern was clear. The question was how to prove it. I called Roy and told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. I asked if he was still there. He said yes. I asked what he was thinking. He said he was thinking this was criminal. I said I knew. He said I needed to go to the police today. I said I was meeting Greg first. Roy said to record the conversation. I said I would. Roy said to get Greg to repeat everything on record. I said I would try. Roy said to be careful. I said I knew. Roy said seriously, be careful. I asked why he was so worried. Roy said because if Julie found out I was talking to Greg, she would escalate. I asked how much more she could escalate. Roy said I did not want to find out. I said okay. Roy said to call him after I met Greg. I said I would. I went home and tried to sleep. I could not. I kept thinking about Julie and Sandra being sisters. I kept thinking about the $50,000 and the fake invoices and the way Rick disappeared. I kept thinking about Greg getting fired and Mark resigning and the 3 owners who sold their houses. I kept thinking about the timeline and the way everything connected. I kept thinking about the fact that I was next. I got up and made coffee. I went through the folder again. I found something I missed. In the August minutes, there was a note that said, "New board president elected. Sandra Reed appointed." I stared at the last name. Reed. Julie Reed. Sandra Reed. Sisters. I screenshot the page. I texted it to Roy. He texted back immediately. He said this was the proof. I said it was not proof they were sisters, just proof they had the same last name. Roy said that was enough to ask questions. I said I was already asking questions. Roy said I needed to ask them louder. I asked what that meant. Roy said it meant I needed to go public. I asked how. Roy said neighborhood group chat, social media, anything. I said I did not want to do that yet. Roy asked why not. I said because I wanted to have everything locked down first. Roy said waiting was risky. I said going public too early was riskier. Roy said okay. I said I would decide after I talked to Greg. I met Greg at 4. The coffee shop was small and quiet. Greg was already there. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with nervous energy. He stood when I walked in. I shook his hand. We sat. I ordered coffee. Greg ordered nothing. I asked if he was okay. He said he was nervous. I asked why. He said because he had not talked about this in 2 years. I said I understood. He said he did not think I did. I asked what he meant. He said he meant that Julie ruined his career. I asked how. He said she told other HOAs he was unreliable and unethical. I asked if that was true. He said no. I asked if he fought back. He said he tried, but no one would hire him. I asked what he did. He said he left the industry. I asked what he did now. He said he worked at a hardware store. I said I was sorry. He said it was not my fault. I pulled out my phone and asked if I could record. Greg said yes. I started recording. I asked Greg to repeat everything he told me on the phone. He did. I asked if he had any proof. He said he had some emails he saved before he was fired. I asked if I could see them. He pulled out his phone and opened his email. He showed me. The emails were between Greg and Rick. Greg was asking for documentation of the roof repairs. Rick was saying the documentation was confidential. Greg was asking why. Rick was saying because the contractor requested it. Greg was asking for a legal basis. Rick was saying the basis was in the HOA bylaws. Greg was saying he reviewed the bylaws and there was no confidentiality clause. Rick stopped responding. I asked Greg if he could forward the emails to me. He said yes. I gave him my email. He forwarded them. I checked my phone. The emails were there. I asked Greg if he knew where Rick was now. Greg said he heard Rick moved to Seattle. I asked if Greg had contact information. Greg said no. I asked if Greg thought Rick would talk. Greg said no. I asked why not. Greg said because Rick got away with it. I asked if Julie got away with it too. Greg said so far. I asked what would make her not get away with it. Greg said proof that she deleted records and proof that she took the money. I said I had proof she deleted records. Greg asked how. I said because Linda confirmed the invoices were suspicious, and the management company had no record of who approved them. Greg said that was not proof Julie deleted them. I said it was proof someone did. Greg said someone was not enough. I asked what was enough. Greg said a witness or a recording. I said I did not have either. Greg said then I needed to get one. I asked Greg if he would be willing to confront Julie. Greg said absolutely not. I asked why not. Greg said because Julie was dangerous. I asked how dangerous. Greg said she knew people. I asked what people. Greg said he did not know, but he knew she had connections in local government and in other HOAs. I asked if she had connections in law enforcement. Greg said he did not know, but he would not be surprised. I asked if he thought she could make problems disappear. Greg said he thought she already had. I asked what that meant. Greg said he meant the investigation was closed too fast and the report was too clean. I asked if he thought Julie bribed someone. Greg said he thought Julie knew how to work the system. I said that sounded like a yes. Greg said it was. I asked Greg if he knew Sandra before she joined the board. Greg said no. I asked if he knew Sandra and Julie were sisters. Greg said not at first. I asked when he found out. Greg said about a month before he was fired. I asked how he found out. Greg said he overheard Julie on the phone. I asked what she said. Greg said she said, "Sandra, you need to vote yes on this or we are both in trouble." I asked if Greg confronted her. Greg said no. I asked why not. Greg said because he was already on thin ice. I asked what thin ice meant. Greg said it meant Julie was already looking for a reason to fire him. I asked why. Greg said because he kept asking about the missing money. I asked if anyone else was asking. Greg said Mark was. I asked if anyone else. Greg said no. I asked why not. Greg said because everyone else either did not know or did not care. I thanked Greg. He said I was welcome. I asked if there was anything else. He said yes. He said I should check the portal audit logs. I asked what those were. He said they were records of who accessed the portal and when. I asked why that mattered. He said because if Julie deleted files, the audit log would show it. I asked if the audit log was public. Greg said no. I asked how I could get it. Greg said I would have to request it from the management company. I asked if Linda would give it to me. Greg said maybe. I said I would ask. Greg said good luck. I said thanks. We stood. Greg said to be careful. I said everyone kept saying that. Greg said everyone was right. I left. I called Linda from the car. She answered. I asked if I could request the portal audit logs. She was quiet. I asked if she was still there. She said yes. I asked if that was a weird request. She said no. I asked if she could provide them. She said maybe. I asked what maybe meant. She said it meant she would have to check with the board. I asked why. She said because audit logs were technically internal documents. I said they were also evidence. Linda was quiet again. I asked what she was thinking. She said she was thinking I was right. I asked if she would help. She said she would try. I asked how long it would take. She said a few days. I said I did not have a few days. Linda said she understood. I asked if there was any way to get him sooner. Linda said she would see what she could do. I thanked her. She hung up. I drove to work. My phone buzzed. It was Roy. He asked how the meeting went. I said it went well. He asked if Greg gave me anything useful. I said he gave me emails and confirmed Julie and Sandra were working together. Roy said that was good. I said it was not enough. Roy asked what else I needed. I said I needed proof Julie deleted the records. Roy asked how I would get that. I said audit logs. Roy asked if I had them. I said not yet. Roy asked when I would get them. I said maybe in a few days. Roy said a few days might be too late. I asked why. Roy said because Julie was escalating. I asked what she did now. Roy said she posted in the neighborhood group chat that I was under investigation for multiple violations. I asked what violations. Roy said she did not specify. I asked if anyone responded. Roy said a few people did. I asked what they said. Roy said some supported her and some asked questions. I asked what Julie said. Roy said she said details were confidential. I asked if anyone called her out. Roy said he did. I asked what happened. Roy said she blocked him from the chat. I asked Roy to screenshot the chat before it disappeared. He said he already did. I asked if he could send it to me. He said he would. I asked if anyone else was asking questions. Roy said one person was. I asked who. Roy said a woman named Claire. I asked if I knew her. Roy said probably not. I asked where Claire lived. Roy said 2 streets over. I asked if Claire was friendly. Roy said she seemed reasonable. I asked if Roy thought Claire would talk to me. Roy said maybe. I asked if Roy could introduce us. Roy said he would try. I thanked him. He said I was welcome. He said to stay focused. I said I was. He said good. I worked my shift. My mind was on Julie and the audit logs and the neighborhood chat and the fact that I was running out of time. The board packet was being finalized this afternoon, and I had to get my evidence included before it was sealed. If I missed the deadline, I would have to wait until the next meeting, and by then, Julie would have escalated again. I needed the audit logs. I needed proof. I needed something that would make the board stop. I called Linda during my break. She answered. I asked if she had the audit logs. She said she did. I asked if she could send them. She said she could, but she wanted to warn me first. I asked what the warning was. She said the logs showed a lot of deletions. I asked when. She said April 2 years ago. I asked who deleted them. She said the account was listed as administrator. I asked who had administrator access. Linda said Greg did, and so did the board president. I asked who the board president was in April 2 years ago. Linda said Rick. I asked if Rick's account showed the deletions. Linda said yes. I asked if that was proof. Linda said it was proof someone using Rick's account deleted the files. I asked if it could have been someone else. Linda said technically yes, but unlikely. I asked why. Linda said because administrator passwords were not shared. I asked if there were exceptions. Linda said sometimes, but it would have been logged. I asked if there were any password share logs. Linda said no. I asked Linda if she could send me the audit logs. She said she would. I gave her my email. She said she would send them in the next hour. I thanked her. She said to use them carefully. I asked what that meant. She said it meant if I accused Rick publicly and I was wrong, I could be sued. I asked if she thought I was wrong. She said no. I asked if she thought Rick would sue. She said she thought Rick was long gone and would not care. I asked if she thought Julie would sue. Linda said absolutely. I said I would be careful. Linda said good. I got the email an hour later. I opened the attachment. The audit log was a spreadsheet. It had columns for date, time, user, action, and file. I scrolled to April 2 years ago. There were dozens of deletions. All of them were under Rick's account. All of them were dated April 15th. The files were labeled Meeting Minutes March, Financial Report March, Invoice 1, Invoice 2, Invoice 3. I stared at the screen. This was it. This was proof. I screenshot every page. I forwarded the email to Roy. I called him. He answered. I told him I had the audit logs. He asked what they showed. I said they showed Rick deleted everything on April 15th. Roy whistled. He said that was the day after the special assessment was paid. I said exactly. Roy said this was the smoking gun. I said it was. Roy asked what I was going to do. I said I was going to confront Julie. Roy said that was risky. I said I knew. Roy said to record everything. I said I would. Roy said to do it in public. I asked why. Roy said, because if something went wrong, there would be witnesses. I asked where. Roy said the city permit counter. I asked why there. Roy said because it was public, it had cameras, and Julie could not claim I was harassing her. I said okay. Roy said to do it tomorrow. I said I would. I finished my shift and went home. It was 4 a.m. I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the audit logs and the fact that I finally had proof. I kept thinking about the way Julie deleted the records, and the way Rick disappeared, and the way Sandra joined the board right after. I kept thinking about the $50,000 and the fake invoices, and the way Greg was fired for asking questions. I kept thinking about the way Mark resigned, and the way 3 owners left. I kept thinking about the fact that I was about to confront Julie, and I had no idea how she would react. I stared at the letter and smiled, because it proved exactly what I suspected. I texted Roy at 9 and asked if he was free. He said yes. I asked if he would come with me to the city permit counter. He said absolutely. I asked if Claire would come. Roy said he would ask. I said okay. Roy texted back 10 minutes later and said Claire would come. I asked if Claire knew what was happening. Roy said he gave her the short version. I asked what the short version was. Roy said corruption, fraud, harassment. I asked if Claire believed him. Roy said she suspected something was wrong. I asked why. Roy said because Julie targeted her last year. I asked for what. Roy said parking a trailer in her driveway. I asked if that was a violation. Roy said the trailer was only there for 3 hours. I asked if Julie fined her anyway. Roy said yes. I asked if Claire paid. Roy said yes. I asked why. Roy said because she did not know she could fight. I said she could have fought. Roy said she knew that now. I met Roy and Claire at the city permit counter at 11. Claire was in her 50s, calm, and looked like she had seen worse. She shook my hand. I thanked her for coming. She said she wanted to help. I asked why. She said because Julie needed to be stopped. I said I agreed. Roy said we should go inside. We walked in. The permit counter was in a large open room with several clerks behind desks. There were cameras in every corner. I checked my phone. Julie had not responded to my text asking her to meet me here. I texted again. No response. I called her. Voicemail. I hung up. Roy said maybe she was not coming. Claire said maybe she knew it was a trap. I said maybe. A clerk asked if we needed help. I said we were waiting for someone. The clerk said okay. We stood near the window. 10 minutes passed. My phone buzzed. It was Julie. The text said, I am here. I looked up. Julie was walking through the door. She saw me. She saw Roy. She saw Claire. She stopped. I waved her over. She walked slowly. She did not look happy. She said this better be important. I said it was. She asked what. I said I wanted to talk about the missing $50,000. Julie's face went blank. She said she did not know what I was talking about. I said I thought she might say that. I pulled out my phone. I opened the audit logs. I showed her the screen. I said these are the portal audit logs from April 2 years ago. Julie stared at the screen. She said that was confidential. I said it was evidence. She said evidence of what? I said evidence that Rick deleted the financial records the day after the special assessment was paid. Julie said that did not prove anything. I said it proved someone was covering something up. Julie said it proved Rick made a mistake. I said deleting dozens of files was not a mistake. Julie said I was speculating. I said I was reading the logs. Julie said the logs were not proof. I said they were enough to reopen the investigation. Julie turned to leave. Roy stepped in front of her. He said she was not done. Julie said she was. Roy said she was not. Julie said if he did not move, she would call security. Roy said there was no security here. Julie said she would call the police. Roy said he was retired police, and he would be happy to explain the situation to them. Julie stopped. She turned back to me. She said I had no idea what I was doing. I said I knew exactly what I was doing. She said I was going to regret this. I said I already regretted moving to Foxglove Falls. She said that was not what she meant. I asked what she meant. She said she meant I was going to lose everything. I asked how. She said she would make sure of it. I asked if that was a threat. She said it was a promise. Claire stepped forward. She said she heard that. Julie looked at Claire. She said Claire should stay out of this. Claire said she was already in it. Julie asked what that meant. Claire said it meant she was a witness. Julie said a witness to what? Claire said a witness to Julie threatening someone. Julie said she did not threaten anyone. Claire said she just did. Julie turned back to me. She said I had no proof. I said I had the audit logs. She said the logs did not prove she did anything. I said the logs proved Rick deleted the records. She said Rick was gone. I said Sandra was not. Julie froze. I said Sandra Reed, your sister, who joined the board right after Rick left, who voted yes on every fine I challenged, who helped you bury this. Julie said that was a lie. I said it was public record. Julie said it was not. I pulled out my phone. I showed her the August minutes with Sandra's last name. Julie stared at the screen. She said that did not prove anything. I said it proved you and Sandra were related. Julie said being related was not a crime. I said conspiring to defraud the HOA was. Julie said I had no proof of conspiracy. I said I had Greg's testimony. Julie went pale. She said Greg was a liar. I said Greg had emails. Julie said Greg was fired. I said Greg was fired for asking questions. Julie said Greg was fired for incompetence. I said Greg was fired because he found out you and Rick stole $50,000. Julie's phone rang. She looked at it. She did not answer. She looked at me. She said this conversation was over. I said it was just starting. She turned and walked out. Roy, Claire, and I watched her go. The clerk at the desk asked if everything was okay. I said it was fine. The clerk said it did not look fine. I said it would be. Roy said Julie was rattled. Claire said she looked scared. I said good. Roy asked what I was going to do next. I said I was going to submit everything to the board. Claire asked if the board would listen. I said I did not know, but I was going to try. Roy said I should also submit it to the police. I said I already submitted it to the state regulatory board. Roy said the state would take months. I said I knew. Roy said the police might move faster. I asked if he thought they would open a case. Roy said if I had enough proof, they might. I asked if I had enough. Roy said he thought so. I said okay. Roy said to do it today. I said I would. I went to the police station after work. I asked to speak to someone about fraud. The officer at the desk asked what kind of fraud. I said HOA fraud. He looked skeptical. I said I had proof. He asked what kind of proof. I said audit logs, fake invoices, and witness testimony. He said to wait. He made a call. 10 minutes later, a detective came out. Her name was Martinez. She asked me to follow her. We went to a small room. She asked me to explain. I did. I showed her the audit logs, the invoices, the emails, the timeline. I told her about Rick, Julie, Sandra, Greg, and Mark. I told her about the missing $50,000. I told her about the deleted records. I told her about the harassment. She listened. She took notes. When I finished, she asked if I had recordings. I said I had a recording of Greg's testimony and a recording of my confrontation with Julie. She asked to hear them. I played them. She took more notes. She asked if I had contact information for Greg and Mark. I said I did. She asked if they would be willing to give statements. I said yes. She said she would follow up. She asked if I felt safe. I said I did not know. She asked if Julie had made direct threats. I said she threatened to make me lose everything. Martinez asked if I had proof. I said Claire witnessed it. Martinez asked for Claire's contact information. I gave it to her. Martinez said she would open a case. She said it would take time. I said I understood. She said to document everything and to call if anything escalated. I said I would. She gave me her card. I left. I called Roy from the car. I told him the police opened a case. He said that was good. I asked if he thought it would go anywhere. He said he thought it might. I asked what would happen to Julie. Roy said that depended on what the investigation found. I asked what he thought they would find. Roy said probably enough to charge her with fraud and embezzlement. I asked what the penalty was. Roy said jail time and restitution. I asked if Sandra would be charged too. Roy said probably. I asked if Rick would be found. Roy said maybe. I said maybe was better than nothing. Roy said I did good. I said I was not done yet. Roy asked what else I was going to do. I said I was going to submit everything to the board and demand Julie and Sandra resign. Roy asked if I thought they would. I said no. Roy asked what I would do if they refused. I said I would go public. Roy said good. I drafted an email to the board. I attached the audit logs, the fake invoices, the timeline, Greg's testimony, and the recordings. I wrote a summary explaining the fraud, the cover-up, and the harassment. I copied the email to Linda, the state regulatory board, and Detective Martinez. I hit send. My phone rang immediately. It was Linda. She said she got my email. I asked if she read it. She said she was reading it now. I asked what she thought. She said she thought the board was going to panic. I asked what would happen. Linda said she did not know, but she thought Sandra would resign immediately. I asked why. Linda said because Sandra was the weak link. I asked what that meant. Linda said it meant Sandra was not as ruthless as Julie. I asked if Julie would resign. Linda said no. I asked what Julie would do. Linda said Julie would fight. I asked how. Linda said Julie would claim the evidence was fabricated. I asked if that would work. Linda said not if the police investigation backed me up. I asked how long that would take. Linda said weeks or months. I said I did not have weeks or months. Linda asked what my deadline was. I said the board packet was being finalized today. Linda said she would make sure my evidence was included. I thanked her. She hung up. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. The text said, "You just made a huge mistake." I screenshot it. I forwarded it to Detective Martinez. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the same number. It said, "You have no idea who you are dealing with." I screenshot it. I forwarded it. My phone rang. I answered. It was Julie. She said I should check my driveway. I asked why. She said I would see. She hung up. I drove home as fast as I could. When I pulled onto my street, I saw it. My car was gone. I parked where my car had been. There was a new sticker on the ground. It was bright red. It said, "Vehicle towed for non-compliance. Contact Foxglove Falls Reserve Association for release." I took photos. I called Roy. He answered. I told him my car was towed. He said that was illegal. I said I knew. He asked if I called the police. I said not yet. He said to call Detective Martinez. I said I would. He asked where I was. I said I was standing in my empty driveway. He said he would be there in 5 minutes. I hung up. I called Martinez. She answered. I told her what happened. She asked if I had proof the tow was unauthorized. I said I had photos of the stickers and text messages from Julie. She said that was enough. She asked for the tow company name. I said I did not know. She said she would find out. She said to stay where I was. I said I would. Roy arrived first. He looked at the empty driveway. He shook his head. He said Julie was desperate. I said desperate people were dangerous. Roy said I was right. A police car pulled up. It was not Martinez. It was a uniformed officer. He asked if I was the one who called about the tow. I said yes. He asked if I had proof the tow was unauthorized. I showed him the photos, the text messages, and the timeline. He looked at everything. He called dispatch. He asked for the tow company that serviced this area. Dispatch gave him a name. He called the tow company. He asked if they had my car. They said yes. He asked who authorized the tow. They said the HOA did. He asked for the name of the person who authorized it. They said Julie Reed. The officer hung up. He looked at me. He said the tow company was holding my car illegally. I asked what that meant. He said it meant they had to release it immediately with no fee. I asked if Julie would be charged. He said that was up to Detective Martinez. He called Martinez. He explained the situation. Martinez said she was on her way. The officer said he would wait. I thanked him. He said I was welcome. Martinez arrived 20 minutes later. She talked to the officer. She looked at the photos. She called the tow company. She told them to release my car immediately and to expect a visit from her. She hung up. She looked at me. She said Julie crossed a line. I asked what that meant. She said it meant Julie just committed a crime on camera. I asked what camera. Martinez pointed at my neighbor's house. There was a doorbell camera. Martinez asked if the neighbor was home. I said I did not know. Martinez walked over and rang the bell. The neighbor answered. Martinez identified herself. She asked if the doorbell camera was recording. The neighbor said yes. Martinez asked if she could review the footage. The neighbor said yes. Martinez asked me to come over. I did. The neighbor pulled up the footage on her phone. It showed a tow truck arriving at 8 this morning. It showed the driver hooking up my car. It showed Julie standing next to the truck, talking on her phone. The timestamp was clear. Martinez asked the neighbor if she could send the footage. The neighbor said yes. Martinez gave her email address. The neighbor sent it. Martinez thanked her. We walked back to my driveway. Martinez said the footage was proof Julie orchestrated the tow. I asked what would happen. Martinez said Julie would be charged with theft and harassment. I asked when. Martinez said soon. I asked how soon. She said within the week. Roy said I should get my car. Martinez said the tow company had to release it. I asked if someone could drive me. Roy said he would. We got in his car. We drove to the tow yard. The manager was waiting. He looked annoyed. He said he was releasing the car under protest. I asked what that meant. He said it meant he thought the tow was valid. Roy said the police disagreed. The manager said the police were wrong. Roy said the police had evidence. The manager said he did not care. Martinez called the manager. She told him if he did not release the car immediately, she would charge him with obstruction. The manager hung up. He gave me my keys. He said I owed nothing. I asked if that was in writing. He printed a release form. It said, "Vehicle released, no fee per police order." I signed it. I took my copy. I got in my car and drove home. When I got home, there was an email from Linda. The subject line said, "Board emergency meeting tonight." I opened it. The email said the board was holding an emergency meeting at 7 to discuss my allegations. The email said I was invited to present my evidence. The email said Julie and Sandra would also be present. The email said the meeting would be recorded. I forwarded the email to Roy, Claire, and Martinez. Roy texted back and said he would be there. Claire said she would be there. Martinez said she would send an officer to observe. I said okay. The meeting was at the community center. I arrived at 6:50. Roy and Claire were already there. So was Linda. So were about 20 other neighbors. I recognized some of them from the group chat. Julie and Sandra were sitting at the front table. Julie looked calm. Sandra looked terrified. The board president, a man I did not recognize, called the meeting to order at 7. He said the board had received serious allegations, and they were here to review them. He asked me to present my evidence. I stood. I connected my laptop to the projector. I pulled up the audit logs. I explained what they showed. I pulled up the fake invoices. I explained what they proved. I pulled up Greg's testimony. I played the recording. I pulled up the doorbell footage. I played it. The room was silent. Julie stood. She said the evidence was fabricated. I asked how. She said the audit logs were fake. I asked if she was calling Linda a liar. Linda stood. She said the audit logs came directly from the portal and she would testify to that in court. Julie sat down. Sandra stood. She said she wanted to resign. Julie looked at her. Sandra said she was sorry, but she could not do this anymore. The board president asked Sandra to clarify. Sandra said she did not know about the missing money until 6 months ago. She said Julie told her it was a mistake. She said Julie told her not to ask questions. She said she was scared. Sandra started crying. Claire stood and asked if Sandra was okay. Sandra said no. Claire walked over and sat next to her. Julie stood again. She said Sandra was lying. Sandra said she was not. Julie said Sandra was trying to save herself. Sandra said Julie was trying to save herself. The board president asked them both to sit down. They did. The board president said the board would vote on whether to refer the matter to law enforcement. Julie said there was nothing to refer. The board president said the evidence suggested otherwise. Julie said the evidence was not credible. The board president asked the other board members what they thought. One said the evidence was compelling. Another said it was enough to investigate. The third said they should refer it immediately. The board president called for a vote. The vote was 4-0 to refer the matter to law enforcement. Julie abstained. She said the vote was invalid. The board president said it was not. Julie said she would challenge it. The board president said she could try. Julie stood and walked out. Sandra stayed. The board president asked Sandra if she had anything else to say. Sandra said she was sorry. The board president said sorry was not enough. Sandra said she knew. The board president asked if Sandra would cooperate with the investigation. Sandra said yes. The board president said good. The meeting ended at 8:30. I walked out with Roy and Claire. Martinez was waiting outside. She said she heard about the vote. I asked if she was surprised. She said no. I asked what would happen next. She said the board's referral would support her case. She said she would move forward with charges against Julie and possibly Sandra. I asked what the charges were. She said fraud, embezzlement, theft, and harassment. I asked what the penalties were. She said it depended, but likely jail time and restitution. I asked if Julie would fight. Martinez said probably. I asked if she thought Julie would win. Martinez said no. I asked why. Martinez said because the evidence was overwhelming. I asked when the charges would be filed. Martinez said within 2 weeks. I thanked her. She said I did good. She said most people would have given up. I said I was not most people. She said she noticed. Roy, Claire, and I went to a diner. We ordered coffee. Roy said I won. I said it did not feel like winning. Roy asked why. I said because I was exhausted. Claire said she understood. Roy said the fight was over. I said it did not feel over. Roy said it would soon. Claire asked what would happen to the HOA. I said I did not know. Roy said probably new elections and a full audit. Claire said good. I said I hoped so. Roy said I should be proud. I said I was too tired to be proud. Claire laughed. Roy laughed. I smiled. 3 weeks later, Julie was charged with fraud, embezzlement, and harassment. Sandra was charged as an accessory. Rick was found in Seattle and charged with fraud. Greg was called as a witness. Mark was called as a witness. The case went to trial 6 months later. Julie was found guilty. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay back the $50,000. Sandra was found guilty of being an accessory. She was sentenced to probation and community service. Rick was found guilty. He was sentenced to 2 years and ordered to pay restitution. The HOA held new elections. Linda became the new board president. The neighborhood group chat exploded with support. Claire started a petition to prevent selective enforcement. Roy became the new compliance officer. I stayed in my house. I kept my job. I kept my car. I kept my sanity. One day, about a year after the trial, I was walking to the mailbox. A woman I did not recognize stopped me. She said she heard what I did. I asked what she meant. She said she heard I took down Julie Reed. I said I did. She said thank you. I asked why she was thanking me. She said because Julie targeted her 3 years ago and she paid fines she should not have paid. She said she wished she had fought back. I said it was not too late. She asked what I meant. I said the HOA was offering refunds for anyone who was unfairly fined. She asked if that was real. I said yes. She asked how to apply. I said to contact Linda. She thanked me again. I said she was welcome. She walked away. I smiled. Roy walked over. He asked what that was about. I said someone else Julie hurt. Roy said there were probably dozens. I said probably. Roy asked if I was okay. I said I was. Roy said good. I said thanks for everything. Roy said I was welcome. I said I meant it. Roy said he knew. We stood there for a minute. Then we walked back to our houses. A few months after that, the HOA formally apologized for the harassment. They issued a written apology that included my name. They included an attorney fee refund clause that makes the board stop the nonsense instantly. The clause said any resident who successfully challenged an unfair fine would be reimbursed for legal fees, and the fine would be refunded. Julie received a written warning for harassment behavior before the trial, and after the conviction, the HOA dropped the case to avoid a public records mess. Karen's phone dies mid-rant and she freezes in place was not exactly what happened, but close enough during one of her last board meetings before the charges. Julie's phone died while she was yelling at someone on speaker, and she just stood there holding the dead phone like it still had power. It was beautiful. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate you being here.